So today we're diving into the work of Søren Kierkegaard. He's this 19th century philosopher, often called the father of existentialism. And in an age of these huge abstract philosophical systems, Kierkegaard did something pretty radical. He turned the spotlight inward, right onto the messy, anxious, passionate life of the individual. His philosophy isn't just theory, It's more like a guide for anyone who's ever felt a little lost and needed to find their way.
Kierkegaard kicks things off with a diagnosis that's really meant to sting. It's this: you are asleep. His big claim is that most of us are just drifting through life in this state of quiet, comfortable despair. We mistake our jobs, our friend groups, our curated online opinions for who we really are. But in his view, we're just ghosts going through the motions. All right, so his whole framework starts right there by forcing us to confront this sickness, this problem of living an inauthentic life. Before we can even think about a cure, we first have to admit that we're not really living at all. So Kierkegaard breaks this down into what he calls stages on life's way. First up, you've got the aesthetic stage. This is all about chasing pleasure, novelty, new experiences. But it always ends in the same place: boredom and despair. So then you might move to the ethical stage, which is built on duty and responsibility. Do the right thing. Sounds good, right? But he argues this just leads to complacency, a kind of self-satisfied dead end. For Kierkegaard, both of these are ultimately traps. They fail to create a true self, and they just push us toward a third, much more radical choice.
Okay, so if chasing pleasure fails us and just doing our duty fails us, how in the world do we find our way? Well, this is where it gets weird. Kierkegaard gives us a very strange compass, and it's something most of us spend our entire lives trying to get rid of: anxiety.
He called it angst. And listen, this is not the fear of something specific, like a looming deadline or, a spider. No, this is that dizzying, profound feeling that comes from our own freedom. It's that gut punch realization that you have boundless possibilities in front of you, and you alone are responsible for the choice. For Kierkegaard, this isn't some illness to be medicated away. It's a signpost, and it's pointing directly at your freedom. I mean, that phrase just perfectly captures it, doesn't it? The dizziness of freedom, that vertigo you feel when you're about to make a huge, life-altering choice. Kierkegaard says that's the compass needle spinning wildly. And he insists that if you try to numb that anxiety with distractions, what you're really doing is choosing to stay asleep. You're giving up the very freedom that makes you human.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the sickness. We've found our compass in anxiety. So what's the move? What action do we actually have to take to wake up and start building an authentic life? For Kierkegaard, it all comes down to his most famous and maybe most misunderstood concept: the leap of faith. But here's the thing: a leap of faith isn't just a blind jump into the dark. It has an anatomy. Step one is objective analysis. You gather all the data, you make your pro-con lists, you push reason to its absolute limit. But reason will always walk you to a cliff's edge, right to a gap where logic and proof can't go any further. Think about getting married, or starting a company, or dedicating your life to a cause. There's always a gap between the evidence and the act itself. The leap is that final step, a passionate, subjective commitment that actually defines your reality. And this all leads to one of Kierkegaard's most famous lines: truth is subjectivity. Now, hold on, this doesn't mean truth is just whatever you feel like it is. What it means is that for the biggest questions in life, the what, the objective facts, are pretty meaningless without the how, the passion, the inwardness of your personal commitment to it. But there's some fine print here. A pretty big catch, actually. For Kierkegaard, who was a deeply devout Christian, this leap wasn't just some general principle for making tough choices. Oh no, it was aimed at a very specific, and for him, a completely non-negotiable target. He called it the absolute paradox. And it's basically the ultimate offense to human reason, the belief that the eternal, infinite God came into being in time as one single, finite human being, Jesus Christ. I mean, to our rational minds, that's a flat-out contradiction. It just doesn't compute. And you can hear it straight from the man himself. He wrote, "The paradox is the object of faith." See, for him, faith doesn't try to explain away this absurdity. It runs towards it. It embraces it. Faith begins precisely at the point where reason throws its hands up and says, "This is impossible." The leap isn't a detour around the paradox. It's a jump directly into it. So all this specificity, this laser focus on a Christian paradox, it leads us to a massive question.
It's really the central critique of his entire project. Is this whole elaborate system just a circular argument?
Let's just put it right out there. If the ultimate cure for our deep existential despair is a leap of faith into Christianity, what if the very idea of that despair, especially all the parts about guilt and sin, is a problem that Christianity itself invented in the first place? This is how the argument goes. Critics, like Nietzsche for instance, basically said that Christianity operates as this perfect problem-solution package. First, it tells you that the human condition is fallen, that you're born with this existential debt of original sin that you can never, ever pay back on your own. And then, conveniently, it offers you the one and only solution to the problem it just defined, salvation through Christ. It's like it sells you the disease and the cure in the very same box.
But Kierkegaard would have a powerful rebuttal to this. He'd fire back and argue that original sin is just a name for a real, pre-existing condition. That anxiety, that alienation, that feeling of being at war with yourself, he believed these are just universal human experiences. In his view, Christianity didn't create the wound, it just gave the most profound diagnosis of a wound that was already there.
So where does that leave us? What's the verdict on Kierkegaard? Is he a universal guide for all of us? Or is he a niche defender of his own faith? I think the answer reveals his true and maybe more specific genius.
Because we have to push back a little on his rebuttal. Is that deep internalized guilt that he describes so vividly, is that really a feature of every human soul everywhere for all time? Or could it be the product of a very specific culture? I mean, if you look at other maps of the soul, you find completely different landscapes. You've got shame and honor cultures, where what really matters is your external social standing, not some internalized guilt. From a Buddhist perspective, the core problem isn't sin, it's attachment and ignorance. And many indigenous worldviews see the main struggle as maintaining balance with the community and the natural world. This really suggests that the sickness Kierkegaard diagnosed so brilliantly might not be universal at all, but a very specific symptom of the Western world. And this, I think, brings us to the real conclusion. Kierkegaard's genius isn't that he provided a universal guide to being human. His true genius is that he was a master cartographer. He drew the most detailed, profound, and painfully accurate map ever made of a very particular, historically significant piece of territory, the anxious, guilt-ridden, post-Christian Western soul. His work is absolutely invaluable for understanding that world and for anyone who finds themselves trying to navigate that specific terrain. But it leaves us with one final and I think crucial question. He mapped one territory with breathtaking precision. So what does your map look like? What are the mountains and the valleys and the chasms that define your authentic life?